looking ahead to the NFL draft on Thursday with Josh Appelbaum of VSIN. I am Kevin Rogers. And of course, Josh, Trevor Lawrence of Clemson probably going number 1 to Jacksonville. Zach Wilson of BYU looks like he's going number 2 to the Jets. Then the big story, the San Francisco 49ers at 3. Will they draft a quarterback? Is Jimmy Garoppolo the guy moving forward? But Mac Jones, what's the latest with him? We're hearing a lot that he would go to the 49ers. Do you believe that he will end up getting drafted 3rd?
I think he will for a couple of different reasons. And number one, you mentioned obviously Lawrence and Zach Wilson. The key here too is when you're betting these props, even though we all kind of think and know, and there's no such thing as a lock or a guarantee in betting, but we think Lawrence is the guy. But he's minus 10,000. That's the other thing you run into with these props. You want to bet Lawrence 1, but the price is so high that there's really no value. There's no worth to it. You have to risk so much to get so little in return that you might as well lay off. But then when the draft, it gets interesting at 3, that, as you mentioned, Kevin, and I've been really laser focused this because we have seen, probably over at least for a month now, really it's been Lawrence and Wilson 1, 2, and the draft really starts at number 3. So here's how a lot of the media and like pro days can really affect a lot of these draft props, because a lot of these books are moving based on kind of, putting your finger in the air and where's the wind blowing based on what you're hearing here. So the interesting thing is, once we saw San Francisco trade up to number 3, we said, okay, they're moving up for a quarterback in mind. You're not going to move up for any other player than a quarterback to move that high, to give up all those picks. And really a lot of the tea leaves early were Mac Jones, a guy who's kind of like Matt Ryan. That's what Shanahan looks for. Guy gets it out quick, who's smart, who can stay on the field and just, drop off the ball to different weapons here, kind of like Matt Ryan. But at one point we saw early Mac Jones get all the way to like minus 300. But a really interesting thing happened about a week ago. You saw a big move with Justin Fields. Justin Fields had a good pro day. There's a lot of talk about Justin Fields being the best, kind of the best athlete in terms of a quarterback here, along with Trey Lance. So you actually saw about a week ago that Justin Fields became a slight favorite. And these markets are very, very volatile because they're moving based on information, based on what they're hearing. So you actually saw Justin Fields flip from like plus 150 dog to like a minus 175 type favorite. And that's when you jumping on Mac Jones was your best time, because at one point last week for about 24 hours, he was plus 120, plus 110. You can risk your 100, get 120 back, 110 back. Now we're starting to see Mac Jones is back to that minus 300 number. So I'm on the Mac Jones train again. Reading the tea leaves, Chris Sims, who's pretty dialed in. He was beating the drum with Mac Jones. Michael Lombardi was beating the drum with Mac Jones. So again, it's not just, picking the right bet or picking the right player, but getting the right number. Even a minus 300 now is a little high. I'd still want to shop around. And that's the other thing with draft props. Different books have different numbers. You might have one book minus 300, Mac Jones 3. Another book may have minus 275. So try to get the best number, but I'm on the Mac Jones train here, Kevin. I think that it's one that makes the most sense in the betting markets. Even though you had that weird thing happen last week with Fields becoming a slight favorite, we're now back to Jones, and I think Jones is your guy at 3.
Obviously, Josh, a lot of people, they keep their eye on the quarterbacks in the first round. It's the sexy position. 5.5 is the number for quarterbacks drafted in the first round coming up on Thursday. And the under is actually the favorite as opposed to the over. What do you think? You already got 2 locked up. You got Lawrence and you got Zach Wilson, and probably Mac Jones will go somewhere there. Then the rest of them, can you get over 5.5? Or you think this stays at 5 or less?
I like the under 5.5 here. So another thing when you're betting these props, pay attention to the juice. The juice, it's not only the price that you have to pay to bet the game or bet the prop, but also kind of lets you know where liability is and where the wind is blowing. So it's always important to me, if I see a minus juice number, the books are making you pay a higher price for a reason. So I do like that under. I would say it lands right on 5. The players you mentioned, we're probably gonna have 1, 2, 3, Lawrence, Wilson, and Mac Jones, and then you're gonna have Fields and Lance, and that's your 5 right there. I've been trying to comb the board here for who your 6th quarterback could be. The interesting thing is Davis Mills, a guy who has generated some buzz here. He's at Stanford, known as a very smart guy. He's had a lot of injuries and he doesn't have a lot of game film. But you did see a lot of money come in on his under draft position, I think it's under 60.5. So maybe he's the one shot you would have, maybe a late first rounder. You hear about Kellen Mond. He's another guy. Trask is kind of a little bit further up. I think you get 5. I think you get 5 right on the number. I'd be surprised if you have someone coming up there late. So I would look at the under 5.5 there. I think you're going to land right on 5 there.
Now, off the quarterbacks, Josh, Kyle Pitts, the tight end out of Florida, who's supposed to be the next big thing out there, the next big franchise changer. A lot we've seen under 5.5 that he's going to be maybe the 4th pick, maybe the 5th pick of the draft. What's the latest with Kyle Pitts and where he could end up?
Yeah, I agree with you. I like this under 5.5. I played the under 5.5 here. And I think, what you're seeing right now is a lot of connection between the Atlanta Falcons and Kyle Pitts. You do have, on the one hand, you have a new coach. And when you have a new coach, Arthur Smith coming in, do you really want to, draft Trey Lance and play the long game? When you're coaching the NFL, you have a couple of years to get things going here. So I think maybe that is the smarter move. Michael Lombardi made a great point. And I always mention Michael because he's the sharpest guy when it comes to NFL draft props. He's helped me catch a ton of them here. But I think the Pitts to Atlanta makes a lot of sense because you still have Ryan under contract. If you get rid of him, you're going to take a huge cap hit and give him another weapon. And I think, falling into the trend of thinking about Pitts with Julio Jones, with Ridley, that makes some sense here, even though I think offensive line, you don't want to see Matt Ryan take all these sacks. But here's where it gets interesting here, Kevin. Remember when you're betting the NFL draft that there are so many different props involving the same player. So you can bet the same guy in a different way. So here are the options that I'm looking at. Pitts over under is 5.5. The under on that is about minus 160. I do like the under. I played the under there. But you have other options. You can bet Pitts to go in the top 5 minus 200. So that would protect you if he goes 4 or 5, but you got to lay a bigger number. Here's the one that I really like. Pitts to be the first non-quarterback selected. So again, if we're reading the tea leaves correctly, it's hard to do. There are things that change. But Lawrence 1, Wilson 2, Mac Jones 3, you get Pitts 4. Why is that important? Because this prop here, the first non-quarterback selected Kyle Pitts is minus 150. So all these bets are similar involving Pitts, but you're paying the lowest juice on that first non-quarterback minus 150. So that's one that I would lean on. But just remember, if you want to bet these props, don't just fall in love with the first one in front of your face. Search, click different tabs on different books. Look up at your app here, and maybe you have a better number on a different one where you're achieving the same goal. You're still betting on Pitts, but let's say he goes 4 and you could have cashed a minus 150. You laid a minus 200 on a top 5. You're just saving always try to maximize your payout, minimize your risk, and know that, again, Pitts, different options, but the minus 150 first quarterback to me is the one with the most value.
Looking at receivers now, Josh, and Jamar Chase, who didn't play this past year at LSU, he sat out, but he looks to be the first receiver to go. He's as high as minus 1,200 to be the first receiver off the board. Maybe he goes to the Bengals at 5. You also have Jalen Waddle from Alabama, Devontae Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner from Alabama. So how do you see, especially those 3 guys shaking out?
Yeah, so definitely Chase. We've seen a lot of movement on him, and this is the importance of, again, if you're trying to, bet the NFL draft the week of, a lot of these numbers are gone on you, but you did see very early on at one point, Chase, I think, was minus 200 to be the first wide receiver. He's now up to minus 1,000. So at minus 1,000, I mentioned before, pros aren't afraid of a lot of these minus numbers, but to me, it's like, I don't want to go much further than minus 400, minus 500, just because at that point, what if something crazy happens? What if a team falls in love with a different player? You're just risking so much that even though we really expect that to happen, I don't think there's much value to it at this point. The intriguing thing to me is a prop bet, a head-to-head. It's Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith, 2 teammates at Alabama. Who will be selected first? Again, here's another option. You can go, there's all these head-to-heads that the books will drop to you, and you can pick who will be selected. It doesn't mean they don't have to be first overall. They don't have to be, the first in general. It's just who will be selected before the other person. One bet that I did make, I'm a little nervous about it, Kevin, but I do like it. It's Jalen Waddle to be selected before Devonta Smith. So it's about minus 150 for Waddle. Smith is about, I think he's plus 125 around there. So it's kind of a short number here. But my take on this one is, and maybe I'm overvaluing this, but we saw Devonta Smith, obviously Heisman winner, put up insane numbers, but he weighed in at 166 pounds. And if in the NFL, that is as light of a wide receiver as you're ever going to find. I do co-host a show at VSIN Betting Across America, where I work with Mike Pritchard, who was a former NFL draftee, a first-round pick, and he was just talking to me about how that can scare away a lot of teams. 166 pounds. I mean, you may get away with it in college, get to the next level. That's a very slight frame that I don't know if it's going to hold up. I hope he has a great career, but to me, seeing that weigh-in being so low and Jalen Waddle kind of being under the radar and being favored in all these head-to-heads. I just think that's a sneaky play on Waddle to be selected before Smith, even though Smith gets all the headlines.
Josh Appelbaum of VSIN, always a great job breaking all of this stuff down and breaking down the NFL draft props. And Josh, we appreciate it so much. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Kevin. Really appreciate it. Good luck. Have fun. And I hope you cash some props here.